Oh, a lot of questions. Dear Ajahn, thank you for taking trouble to have the retreat for us. It is not easy to organize one. Well, for that you have to thank not just me, but the Sangha and all the organizers, all the people who provided food, and they're not all here, some of them are off-site. And then the organizers such as Luang and Kun Siong and all the volunteers who help, everyone plays a part. I have a question to ask about my personal experience. I had cried a few times after listening to Dharma talks from some monks, and sometimes after reading some Dharma books. I felt a big wave of sadness and could not control my tears. What could be the reason for crying, and I could not figure it out myself. Maybe you'll be able to practice to be free from suffering. Well, we've been talking a little bit about the Dhamma we call piti. Piti means, it's translated as rapture. It comes up from listening to Dhamma, meditating, chanting, doing good things. Many stimulants to piti arising. It can be rapture, joy. It's a kind of, generally it's a joyful, positive emotion. And it can be experienced physically, so one of the physical ways you experience piti is tears. This is different than, say, tears of sadness, say you lose a loved one. It's different from that. But there is a sadness to the Dhamma sometimes, because you're waking up to the truth, and sometimes the truth kind of sobers you up. The Buddha said it's like coming out of intoxication. You were formerly drunk with the world, with life. Then you hear the Dhamma, or you meditate and reflect on the Dhamma, and you're waking up to truth. So sometimes that leads to a release, and you get tears. So it can seem sad, but actually it's coming from a positive thing. You're starting to go beyond suffering. So they're seen as a positive thing. And it's one of the factors, piti is one of the factors of samadhi. So quite often before your mind settles into samadhi, you might get tears or goosebumps or feel very light in your body, in your mind. Maybe your mind becomes very radiant. Sometimes you have the feeling like your mind is expanding out of your body and can feel this whole hall, or even go beyond the hall. Can feel like your mind is just penetrating the roof, going up to the sky, to the heavens. So piti can be sometimes quite an unusual experience. It can be a bit, not frightening, but disturbing at first, or it can stimulate curiosity, doubt, what is this, what's happening? But it also can be very joyful. And piti in different forms can last for a few minutes, or a few hours, or even a few days. If you have a lot of piti and sukha from your meditation, from your practice, maybe you feel like you're walking around and you're just floating. You don't feel the ground, you don't feel your body while you're walking. It's as if you're floating around on air, treading on cotton wool. All the heaviness of the body has gone. Sometimes that's when you have an insight, or you've had a battle with some defilement and you've abandoned that defilement. Greed, anger, delusion, worry, fear. The relief just makes you feel so light. So I think what you're experiencing is positive, the tears. what you might find is if you practice a lot, well, sometimes the tears will come up just very briefly, and then you kind of move on. Myself, I've mentioned before, I get a lot of tears from Dhamma practice, from meditation, listening to Dhamma. But I used to get a lot more actual water. Now my eyes have dried out. I had to go and see the doctor. Dry eyes from meditation, pity, tears. And the doctor said, basically, I've shed so many tears that, there's not so many left now. But I still get some, but just not as much as before. Thai question. นมัสการหลวงพ่อฝึกกสิณเบื้องต้นต้องปฏิบัติอย่างไรเจ้าค่ะกสิณเหรอทำไมต้องฝึกกสิณด้วย I'll answer in Thai first. ฝึกกสิณก็ตามหนังสือก็กสิณ10เนาะต้องมีวงกลมดินวงกลมน้ำวงกลมไฟวงกลมสีเราเพ่งอยู่ที่วงกลมจนกระทั่งเราจำได้หลับตาก็เห็นลืมตาก็เห็นแต่เป็นนิมิตที่เราเพ่งอยู่ก็เป็น อุกหะนิมิตปฏิภาคนิมิตแต่ปัญหาอยู่ที่ถ้าเราไม่มีปัญญาไม่มีบารมีกสิณบางที่ก็มีปัญหาบางที่ทำให้คนหลงบางที่เกิดติดแสงสว่างบ้างบางที่เป็นเหตุให้เกิดภาพนิมิตบ้างเห็นนรกเห็นสวรรค์เห็นผีเห็นอะไรหรือบางทีติดอยู่ในนิมิตของกสิณขาดสติสัมปชัญญะก็ติดไปไม่ได้พิจารณาไม่มีปัญญาในการฝึกบางคนก็เป็นอย่างนี้ก็เลยครูบาอาจารย์ไม่ค่อยได้แนะนำให้ทำหลวงปู่มั่นหลวงปู่ชาก็จะแนะนำให้กำหนดหายใจเข้าออกหรือท่องพุทโธเบื้องต้นต่อมาก็เพ่งอยู่ที่ร่างกายอาการ32หรือธาตุ4หรืออสุภ10กสิณเอาไว้ที่หลังวันนี้คล้ายๆก็ต้องเป็นผู้ที่ชำนาญในสมาธิแล้วอาจจะเพิ่มความสามารถด้วยการฝึกกสิณเพราะส่วนใหญ่ใช้กสิณเพื่อเกิดความรู้พิเศษฤทธิ์อภิญญาเช่นหลวงปู่เปลี่ยนสมัยก่อนก็มาที่นี่หลวงปู่เปลี่ยนมาท่านก็เก่งกสิณไฟแต่ท่านไม่ได้แนะนำให้ลูกศิษย์ทำท่านจะแนะนำให้ท่องพุทโธหรือกำหนดหายใจเข้าออกแต่ท่านเองก็มีบารมีเก่ามีวาสนาฝึกกสิณได้โยมอาจจะเคยเห็นภาพมีไฟเป็นดวงรอบท่านหรือเวลาท่านอธิษฐานจิตพรมน้ำมนต์บางทีก็เหมือนมีไฟทะลุผนังหลายอย่างท่านมีอภิญญาเกิดจากกสิณองค์อื่นที่มีกสิณก็มีในเมืองไทยแต่น้อยที่จะใช้ให้เกิดประโยชน์ในคนที่หลงกสิณก็มีเคยรู้จักพระที่ฝึกกสิณฝ่าย2 รูปแต่ไม่มีปัญญาเท่าไหร่ฝึกแล้วกำลังเพ่งดวงไฟตัวก็ร้อนขึ้นพอได้สมาธิเขาแข่งกันใครเก่งกว่านั่งเก่งกว่ากสิณไฟแรงกว่าก็เลยองค์นี้ก็แพ่งองค์นั้นก็แพ่งองค์นี้สู้กันจนกระทั่งองค์หนึ่งก็เกิดเจ็บหน้าอกต้องเข้าโรงพยาบาล เพราะกสิณไฟทำให้ท่านร้อนมีโกรธด้วยมี ความแข็งขันมีทิฏฐิมานะด้วยพระรูปอื่นสอนเขาไม่ฟังสุดท้ายก็อยู่ในสำนักนั้นไม่ได้ไม่มีปัญญาไม่ได้เกิดประโยชน์เอาเงินหลงกสิณหลงนิมิตป้าไปเลยก็มีโดยครูบาอาจารย์ไม่ค่อยแนะนำให้ฝึกแนวอื่นก่อนธรรมดาสติปัฏฐานสี่กำหนดกายเวทนาจิตกับธรรมลมหายใจเข้าออกก็ได้พุทธานุสติก็ได้น่าจะดีกว่า There was a question about the practice of kasinas, which you may have heard about. If you read the Visuddhimagga or some of the other commentaries, usually talk about 10 kasina meditation objects. So there's colors, light, fire, earth kasina, water kasina. Usually the teachers say, don't practice a kasina until you've developed another meditation object first, such as the breath, or buddhanusati. Practice satipatthana. And then if you're more skilled in samadhi, you may progress further by practicing kasina, if you have the time. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes people practice kasina without much wisdom. They get a lot of nimittas and visions and get lost in the visions. Maybe they see ghosts or different beings, confuses them. Sometimes people develop a kasina and they're just so intent on getting really strong samadhi, and then they become a little bit conceited around that, and then they even have like kasina competitions between different monks. And that's not the purpose of Buddhism. And I told the story in Thai that there were two monks I knew who were competing with each other. They were developing the fire kasina, focusing on, first of all, on the light from a candle, and then making that into a disc. And then once they were getting some samadhi, instead of using it for vipassana, to let go of defilements, they were using it to fight each other. So sitting there, sending the kasina to burn the other monk. And one of them ended up in the hospital with this terrible chest pain, which doesn't seem like a very good thing. Doesn't seem to be what the Buddha taught. The Buddha didn't teach you to practice until you get a chest pain and end up in hospital. Doesn't make much sense. So kasinas often are associated with people who practice that but without much wisdom. So the teachers say practice other methods first, and for someone with real skill, like Luang Plian used to come here, he did have skill with a kasina, but he didn't recommend other people to practice it. He said practice mindfulness of breathing, or one of the more common meditation objects. I used to go and see Luang Por Buddhadasa, who's not known for his meditation and samadhi, but he actually had very good samadhi and he had psychic ability, and he got this from practicing the light kasina, aloka kasina. And he said that when his kasina, when he developed it really well, he could walk. It's a bit like, you hear about soldiers and people that can go around at night with infrared goggles and see in the dark. He said he didn't need infrared goggles, he just used his light kasina. He could walk through the forest without a torch, and he'd know where he's going and he wouldn't bump into things. And he had very good samadhi, and he was very good at knowing what people were thinking and what level of practice people were at, whether they had samadhi or not, whether they were very defiled or their mind was more pure. But he didn't talk about it very much. Like most teachers, they don't talk about psychic phenomena or this kind of knowledge. But occasionally he'd use it to teach. So one story was there was a monk who was secretly eating in the evening, which is against the rules. We're not allowed to eat after midday. and he would store up noodles, instant noodles in his hut. Mama. When I was a young monk, there was only one brand, Mama. Now you have so many brands, I don't know all the names, but he would store Mama in his kuti, and he could boil up a bit of water and eat in the middle of the night when he was hungry or just wanted a snack, which is totally against the rules. The Buddha was very strict, didn't allow you to eat afternoon as a monk. And one day, all the monks were sitting there at Suan Mok, where Ajahn Buddhadasa lives. They have a big circle of stone, the stone circle, where sometimes the monks would sit to receive groups of lay people at the mealtime. They'd give a blessing, receive food. And one time, all these buses came down from Bangkok with lots of very nice food, because normally the food at Suan Mok wasn't that great. It's very simple. So this was a weekend and they bought lots of nice food, a bit like today in our monastery. So all the nice food was there and the monks were happy and they're sitting there, and the lay people were coming up serving all the monks as they're sitting there. And as they got to the monk who secretly was eating food, Luang Buddhadasa just said, "Oh, you don't need to serve him, he's eaten already." And the monk was so embarrassed. It's like, oh, how did he know? And this was the light kasina. The light kasina you can use to know events in the future, in the past, see things in other places, what's going on. Another monk who had kasina, Luang Supa, who lived in Phuket, and he had amazing psychic powers. He mastered the jhanas, arupa jhanas as well as the rupa jhanas, and amazing psychic ability. He could tell what was going on in his monastery when he wasn't there. He didn't need anyone to tell him, he just knew. So he was in a hospital one day in Bangkok getting his eyes fixed. I think he had cataracts. And went to visit, and he says, "Can I borrow a phone?" He didn't have a phone, but he said, "Can I borrow a mobile phone?" Maybe this is a long time ago now, 25 years ago, but mobile phones had already begun. And somebody lent him a phone, and he phoned back to his monastery, and the monk answered, and he said, "Can you stop arguing with the nun?" And the monk is like, "Huh? Luang Po, how do you know?" He knew everything that they were getting up to in the monastery, and so he could tell them off when they did things wrong. So kasina, when mastered, can bring you this kind of knowledge. And that's why often it's very attractive, but it's not really, for most people, it's not the right meditation, I would say.
ขอถามได้ไหมคะจากเรื่องกสิณนะคะคือว่าจากประสบการณ์ส่วนตัวคือหนูไม่ได้มีสมาธิอะไรเก่งอะไรแต่ว่าเคยทำเพ่งอยู่แต่ว่ามันรักษาได้จริงๆนะคะมือข้อมือหนูที่มันปวดนะคะคือมันร้อนจนถึงวันรุ่งขึ้นเลยค่ะพอจนแบบ11 โมงเช้ายังบอกว่ามันร้อนแล้วหลังจากนั้นมันก็หายไปจนวันนี้หนูไม่เจ็บเลยข้อมือก็
ใช้รักษาโรคได้
นั่งแค่3 วันหนูแค่เพ่ง1 ชั่วโมงให้1 เทียนดับ
ก็สมาธิทุกชนิดทุกแบบอารมณ์กรรมฐานทุกชนิดใช้ได้ไม่ได้ห้ามแต่ว่าคนส่วนใหญ่ไม่ค่อยถูกจริต
แต่ที่ไม่ได้ไปเพ่งตรงนี้เลยนะคะแต่มันรักษาของมันเองจากประสบการณ์
ก็สมาธิก็มีคุณสมบัติอันหนึ่งก็รักษาโรคได้ทำให้ความเจ็บปวดในร่างกายทำให้เขาเรียกธาตุจะปรับปรุงได้ด้วยสมาธิบางทีแค่นั่งสมาธิก็หายจากโรคเบาๆได้หายจากเจ็บปวดได้อานิสงส์ของสมาธิเป็นอย่างนี้บางทีพลังสมาธิมันจะวิ่งไปที่จุดที่เสียหรือมีปัญหาโดยไม่ต้องอธิษฐานไม่ต้องกำหนดก็ได้มันวิ่งไปเองก็มีแต่พูดถึงการฝึกกสิณนี่ที่เขาถามยอมถามหรือเปล่า สติปัฏฐานสี่ดีกว่า Question. Dear Ajahn, what is citta, mind? Well, you've answered it. Citta is mind. Next question. How do we observe it in meditation? You observe it. How do we investigate its characteristics? You investigate. This is the trouble when you answer too many questions. So, citta is one of the words for the mind, or translated as mind. Luang Chah used to say puru, which means the one who knows, or the knowing. And this is a neutral quality. Obviously, when we say the one who knows, we don't mean a person, it's just this quality of knowing. You might say awareness, or that which is aware, that which knows, is the mind, is the citta. As opposed to something that's not the mind, which is solid, which is rupa, which is physical. So like your leg doesn't know. The leg is made up of bones and flesh and skin. That doesn't know. But the mind knows. And the mind may be linked to the leg. Because you have a human being, we have both nama and rupa. So there's a link, there's a connection, but they're not the same thing. That's why you can cut your hair and cut your nails and throw them away. Your nails don't know anything. They're gone once you throw them away. But the citta inhabits the body, or is with the body when you're born until you die. It's kind of like borrowing the physical part of our form. So this body is like a rental property. You just rent it temporarily, and then you send it back to the owner, the earth. The mind will go on looking for somewhere else to be born, so you get rebirth. So the mind is that which knows, and you can know through your eyes, your ears, tongue, smell, taste, and of course the mind knows itself, memories, thoughts. It's that which knows. Doesn't always mean it knows correctly. Because of defilements, we often know wrongly. We know with a sense of self. So we say, my mind. Doubt, I can't make up my mind. I'm in two minds. You're just confused, so you're jumping from thought to thought, aren't you? So you're in two minds, or many minds. Really, there's just one mind, but it's jumping from object to object. And we say, like a monkey. When the more stressed you are, the more it seems like your mind is racing. We say, my mind is racing. It's not racing anywhere, it's just moving a lot from object to object, thought to thought. And so you feel suffering. So how do we investigate? Well, you have to establish mindfulness, sati sampajanya, so that you can know your mind. Because the mind, or the citta, is arising and ceasing all the time, that's why it can keep jumping from object to object. If you establish mindfulness, you can keep up with it. And also you can start changing what's going on a bit, you can affect it. Just the mind with mindfulness is a better quality than the mind without mindfulness. So already, if you establish mindfulness, you feel better. You feel more calm, brings with it a sense of calm, equanimity. So we can train this mind to know with the Dhamma. The entire Dhamma practice is about training the mind to know correctly, rather than know with defilement, which is incorrect and leads to suffering, to know with Dhamma, with Sila, Samadhi, Panya, the Noble Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths. So you can know things correctly so you don't suffer. But to investigate, you have to establish awareness first. Another question, what are the benefits of putting on robes as monks or novice monks compared with anagarika or lay people living in the same monastery? Well, if you're ready to take on the discipline of a monk, there's many rules you have to follow, practices you have to do. It takes a lot of commitment, true, but you get something back from that. It's a very complete way of training. You have to be very committed, very mindful, you have to put effort in, you have to learn things, and then you have to be mindful from day to day of your rules, of the fact that you're a monk now. So one of the defining qualities of a Buddhist monk is, if they're practicing correctly, is they develop very strong sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing, what we often call a conscience. And so they're very careful not to say or do things that under the influence of the defilement, so they don't act in greed or anger. Of course, if they're not enlightened yet, they will still sometimes have greed and anger there, so they sometimes may act on it, but they're very careful. So they're always practicing restraint, care, attention, and they develop very good qualities, and often quite quickly too. So it's a lifestyle to support meditation, to support this investigation of the mind you were just asking about. It's not for everyone, maybe. And so as a layperson you can also practice. It's not you can't practice as a layperson, you can. But sometimes the lay life, as we know, is complicated, cluttered, full of things, full of people, full of activities. So sometimes it's harder, isn't it, if we're honest. Lay people, you have families. Like as a monk, you're just training yourself. Even though you live with other monks, maybe, you're responsible for yourself. You're single, you don't have kids, you can just focus on yourself, training your mind to see and understand the Dhamma. So it's a very good way to live, and you live simply, depend on whatever support you get. In the lay life you have to go out and earn money and work, so things start to get complicated, and then maybe you're feeling lonely, so you get a partner, already more complicated, then maybe you get a few kids, it gets very complicated. You know, monk has 5 khandhas to deal with, that's already a lot, 5 things. Lay person, you got husband, 5 khandhas, wife, another 5, that's 10. 10 opportunities for trouble. And then you have 1 kid, that's another 5, that's 15. 2 kids, 20. 3 kids, 25. So I was brought up with a family with 3 kids. So that's 25 khandhas bouncing off each other every day. Like, dislike, happy, sad. You go to work, maybe there's 5, 10, 20, 30 people in your workplace. That's another 100 khandhas straight away. A lot of khandhas. You get on the bus, another 100 khandhas. You go out in your car, the road is full of hundreds of khandhas. You get the point. There's things get complicated. It's not impossible. If you're disciplined and you're committed, you can practice as well, but there can be more obstacles. Thank you, Ajahn, for guiding us on the topic of death. What should one's thoughts be just before death? And what should the person say to his or her loved ones? Well, probably very difficult to predict what you're going to think just before you die. That's the problem, isn't it? You don't know, so then you get worried. What if I start thinking something unskillful before I die? The best preparation for death, I would say, is practice meditation every day. If you practice every day and you start to get skilled in developing states of samadhi, maintaining mindfulness through all the different things you encounter in life, then death is just another thing you will encounter. One day it will happen. You don't know when. So that's another value of practicing mindfulness and meditation and investigating the Dhamma. It prepares you for things like death, because you don't know when it will come. And if you've developed some skill in samatha, vipassana meditation, whenever death does come, there's this preparedness, and maybe you can just stay with your meditation object right to the moment you die. So, you may be in a situation where you're ill, you're still conscious, so you maybe do some breathing meditation because you've done it before. Or even in an unusual situation, you're in a car accident. There was a lady once said she was on the Hume Highway and she's driving and this other car left the road, was coming towards her, and she was going really fast and she thought she can't brake in time, she's going to die. So she was just thinking of the Buddha. Keep her mindfulness. Luckily at the last minute, these two cars dodged each other. But at first she thought she's going to die, so she was thinking of the Buddha. If you can't meditate, then the second best might be think of Buddha or think of something wholesome that brings you a sense of calm, peace, happiness. Think of the dana you've given, the precepts you've kept, the good things you've done in your life. That might help. But best of all is meditate, so you can keep your mind calm. When there's pain, there's discomfort, worry, fear comes up, you keep your mind calm by turning to your meditation object. Chanting also, but you don't know whether you'll be able to chant. Maybe when you get very ill or at the end of your life you can't chant. So probably the best is a meditation object. What should you tell your loved ones? Well, tell them you love them and wish them well. Not much you can do, is it? Try to not to be a burden to them. Clear up all your problems. If you are still angry with your loved ones, and this is very common, well, clear it up. Forgive them. Apologize if you need to. Forgive them. Clear up any bad feeling. Show your appreciation. Be kind. Over the years, I've met a few people who are close to death who are really grumpy because they're dying. Nobody wants to die, so they become really grumpy, ungrateful, annoying, unpleasant to be around. And the family are kind of looking after them, but they're all kind of rolling their eyes. Oh, it's usually men, but not always. Sometimes women. I don't know. Maybe men get more grumpy than women. But they're complaining and grumpy, and everyone has to tread around them on tiptoes. Don't be like that. Metta, forgiveness, compassion, letting go, relax. Think of the good things if you can. The best way to prepare for that is do it now when you're alive, so that when it happens you're ready. And you can be a blessing to your family. It can be a blessing to be around someone who's dying in a beautiful way, because they understand what they have to do. They're letting go, they're calm, they're relaxed, and maybe they really understand Dhamma at that point. Because if you're dying, there's nothing you can do, and you can't take anything with you other than your own mind, so you might as well keep your mind happy, have a lot of kindness. That would be a good way to die. Dear Ajahn, many thanks for your beautiful teachings. Few of us have hearing difficulties. We don't hear you well inside the hall. Okay. If you can kindly consider to turn the volume up or speak closer to the microphone. I'll do my best. Trouble is, I speak loudly, then I lose my voice. This is a Thai question. Niwon ha mi arai bang? Google เอาก็ได้ดูหนังสือก็ได้แล้วถ้าเกิดเราจะจัดการอย่างไรครับมันเกิดตลอดเวลาที่เรามาปฏิบัติธรรมเพราะมีนิวรณ์ห้าเกิดตลอดเวลาสลับกันเหมือนเป็นโจร5 คนกามราคะความพอใจในกามเรียกอะไรพยาบาทความโกรธความไม่พอใจทินามิทะความง่วงความเขาเรียกถอยจากอารมณ์เพราะง่วงเพราะเบลอฟุ้งซ่านวิจิกิจฉาฟุ้งซ่านกังวลใจแล้วก็วิจิกิจฉาก็ความลังเลสงสัยอุทธัจจะคุกุจฉาความกังวลใจความฟุ้งซ่านนี่นิวรณ์5ก็เหมือนโจร5 คนครับมันอยู่ในหนังจีนมีโจร5 คนมีพระเอก1 คนสู้คนนี้เข้ามาก็ต้องสู้คนนั้นเข้ามาก็สู้นิวรณ์เป็นอย่างนี้พอจัดการนิวรณ์กำลังไม่พอใจก็เลยเมตตาให้อภัยจบความง่วงก็เข้ามาจัดการความง่วงสู้นั่งให้ตรงสู้จนความง่วงหายไปกามราคะเกิดสู้กับกามราคะดับความฟุ้งซ่านก็เข้ามามึงก็สลับกันตลอดเวลามันน่าเบื่อแต่ว่าไม่มีทางเลือกเราต้องสู้ด้วยการฝึกสติจนได้แล้วก็ฝึกปัญญาแก้ไขทีละเรื่องทีละอย่างบางทีนิวรณ์ข้อนี้ขึ้นมาแรงวันนี้โมโหแรงพรุ่งนี้กามราคะแรงมื้อนี้นั่งหลับมันสลับกันเราก็ต้องฝึกตลอดเวลาแล้วก็ต้องมีอุบายฝึกกับทุกข้อ5 ข้อต้องมี5 อุบายบางทีนั่งหลับก็เดินจงกรมแล้วเพ่งกสิณโมโหก็เจริญเมตตากามราคะพิจารณาอสุภะบ้างพิจารณาความไม่เที่ยงบ้างวิจิกิจฉาบางทีก็ฟังธรรมพิจารณาธรรมฟุ้งซ่านบางทีก็พิจารณาความตายฟุ้งทำไมเราจะตาย เราก็หาอุบายที่ได้ผลกับเราแล้วก็เอามาใช้ทุกครั้งบ่อยๆจนชำนาญในการละนิวรณ์เข้าถึงสมาธิจิตสงบจิตรวมฟุ้งซ่านนิวรณ์ทำให้เราฟุ้งซ่านแตกกระจายไปสมาธิความตั้งใจมีสติแล้วก็มีความตั้งใจดีเกิดสมาธิพลังจะเข้ามาและควบคุมจิตได้เวลามีสมาธิก็ต้องฝึกที่เรามาฝึกเดินจงกรมนั่งสมาธิก็ฝึกข้ามนิวรณ์ให้ได้ There's a question about the nivaranas. Nivarana means hindrance to goodness arising. So usually we apply it in meditation to stop your mind from concentrating on an object, seeing the truth. So samatha or vipassana meditation are blocked by the hindrances. But really hindrances are there all the time, so it's not like you only get hindrances when you meditate, and the rest of the time they're not there. When you do dana, you get hindrances. You're doing dana, say you're getting stressed because you're late or there's a lot to do to get it ready to offer some dana. So you might get annoyed or angry or stressed or worried. That's hindrances at work. You're trying to do a job, clean something, cleaning the kitchen, cleaning the toilet, and you start to worry, how do I do that? Maybe there's some dirt you can't clean off. How do I do this? What do I do? Start getting worried about it. Hindrances come up all the time in life, not just when you meditate, but when you're meditating, you're really looking at them closely. So it's the best opportunity to understand how they arise and what to do about them, and you develop some good, skillful means to cut them off. So like metta can cut off anger. Contemplate impermanence. You can use that for almost any hindrances. It's not sure. It's just another thought comes up. Don't have to believe it. It's not sure. It rises, ceases. Maybe listening to Dhamma helps to calm the hindrances down, especially if you're a doubter. If you're one who's very sensual, you're always thinking of things that you like, beautiful things, beautiful clothes, beautiful music, delicious food, sex, all those things. You have to find something that will bring up the opposite, maybe that help you let go of that attachment or desire for those pleasures. So like with food, a very easy one is just think of how short a meal is. You spend all that time thinking and planning, I want this nice food, it's got to be like this and that. It's over in 10 minutes. What's the big deal? Ajahn Chah used to say, if you're already attached to food, the first mouthful of this delicious food you've been excited over, it smells good, looks good, put it in your mouth, chew it a bit, mix with your saliva, but before you swallow, spit it out in your hand and look at it. That beautiful, delicious food in your hand doesn't look so good, does it? Maybe that's enough to do it. If it's the body, you're obsessed with your own beauty or other people's beauty or good looks, then start noticing the bits that are not beautiful. Your mind keeps going to their skin. We're often obsessed with people's skin, how smooth, beautiful, the colour, all of that. Well, are there any bits of the skin that are not so beautiful? Like most people's feet have dry skin, wrinkly skin, dirty skin, whatever, or injured skin maybe. Think of that. Wrinkles. Or, if you're looking at someone's face, don't just look at the beautiful skin or the beautiful eyes. Well, what about looking up the nose, the snot? Or looking in the ears, the earwax? You're taking a closer look at the human body and it will counter the obsession with beauty and the superficial. This is how we deal with hindrances. We get some tools, some skillful means ready, and then we can use them in our meditation until the mind settles on a single object. Then all the hindrances will disappear. As long as you have samadhi, the hindrances won't bother you. Then your samadhi starts to fade and fall away, and then the hindrances come back. So it's kind of a battle. So when I was a young monk, we had lots of battles with sleepiness, because most people do. So one way we deal with sleepiness is with chant. Chant, 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 chant. Learn the Patimokkha, stay up late at night chanting the Patimokkha, learning the Parittas like we chant tonight, using the chanting to keep yourself awake. And so we had this one novice, he's about 16, and I'm not sure how much he understood about meditation, but he understood if he chanted, he's not going to fall asleep, and he was always falling asleep. He's just a boy. So you'd hear him at his kuti at night, chanting, walking up and down on his walking path, learning the parittas. Iti piso bhagava arahang sama. Oh, that's going well. And then he'd come in the hall and he'd put his heart into the morning chanting, the evening chanting. Yo so bhagava arahang. Really loud and really put his heart into it, and you chant for like half an hour maybe, and then we finish the chanting, and then all the adult monks say, oh, now we're going to do our meditation maybe for an hour, now we'll get into the meditation. And the little novice, he'd finish the last sentence of the chanting, take a deep breath, and then just collapse. And it's be collapsed for the next hour. So, yeah, it's a battle. The hindrances are a battle, but you get better at them, at dealing with them over time. Oh, still a lot of questions, so maybe I'll just do one more and we'll carry on tomorrow. This one's in Thai again, so we'll start in Thai and then go on to English. กราบนมัสการหลวงพ่อเจ้าข้าเราถือศีล8แล้วเราเข้าใจไปกวดญาติผู้ใหญ่ที่เป็นผู้ชายเรานับถือเหนือพ่อค่ะถือว่าผิดศีลหรือเปล่าเราเข้าไปกราบญาติผู้ใหญ่ที่เป็นผู้ชายเรานับถือเหมือนพ่อเหนือพ่อเหมือนพ่อถือว่าผิดศีลเอากอดญาติผู้ใหญ่ถ้าเราถือศีล8เราไม่ต้องไปกอดใครช่วงนั้นรอให้ออกจากศีล5จึงจะไปกอดศีล8พรหมจรรย์ไม่ต้องไปกอดถ้าเราเป็นผู้หญิงไม่ต้องไปกอดผู้ชายไม่ต้องไปกอดผู้หญิงเราก็ฝึกให้สำรวมเหมือนพระอนาคามีไม่ติดกับเนื้อหนังเหมือนเป็นเมชีเหมือนเป็นคฤหัสถ์เราต้องฝึกให้รู้จักแยกเราไม่ต้องกอดเราก็แสดงความรักแนวอื่นก็ได้พูดดีๆดูแลรับใช้ได้แต่ไม่ต้องกอดแต่ถ้าออกจากศีลแล้วคอยกอดก็ได้ถ้าเป็นเพศตรงกันข้ามนะถ้าเป็นเพศเดียวกันโอเคกอดไม่เป็นไรมีเด็กผู้ชายอายุ9 ปีวิ่งเข้ามากอดเราเพราะว่าเด็กผู้ชายนับถือเราเป็นบ้าญาติผู้ใหญ่ถือว่าเป็นผิดศีลหรือเปล่าห้ามยากเนาะถ้าเป็นเด็กก็จะอนุโลมนิดหน่อยถ้าเขามากอดเราไม่นานก็กอดเราก็ไม่เป็นไรเขามีความหวังดีมีเมตตามีความผูกพันกับเราแต่ถ้าเป็นผู้ใหญ่ผู้ชายกอดผู้หญิงไม่ค่อยดีถือว่าผิดศีลนอนห้องเดียวกันไม่ได้เหมือนกันผู้ชายผู้หญิงไม่ควรที่จริงนอนบ้านเดียวกันก็ไม่ควรในวัดเราก็แยกผู้หญิงไปทางโน้นผู้ชายไปทางนี้ศีล8เป็นอย่างนั้นในแนวพุทธศาสนาเข้มงวดเด็กวิ่งมากอดเรานิดหน่อยก็ไม่เป็นไรไม่ต้องไปคิดมากThis was a question about the keeping the 8 precepts. If you have a adult male relative, you're a female, and you keep the 8 precepts and you go and hug this adult male relative, is that wrong or improper? Strictly speaking, it is. You shouldn't be touching or hugging men. If you're a woman or if you're a man, you shouldn't be touching or hugging women. Because you're keeping the 8 precepts, that's the whole point. You're practicing celibacy and you're not engaging in intimate behavior of any kind. So you have to just learn to show your love when you're keeping the 8 precepts. You show your love to the opposite sex in other ways. You can speak kindly, you can help out in other ways, but don't hug them. And the other question was if a little kid who's a relative comes in and hugs you because you're the kid's auntie, is that wrong? Well, maybe you can't stop the kid running to you because they've just seen you as an auntie, not as someone keeping 8 precepts. If you would choose, you wouldn't do it. But if it happens, they just come up and hug you and it's only a few seconds or a few moments, well, never mind. It's a small thing and they're just a kid. With adults, it's not appropriate to have much physical contact We don't really sit next to each other on 8 precepts because we are practicing celibacy, and quite easy for intimate relations to arise when you're keeping 8 precepts. Sexual desire and the desire for intimacy is very strong, and it will come up very fast. So generally you separate the genders when you're practicing 8 precepts. Same for monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen on 8 precepts. Just the simplest way to keep the precept, and then you can really be clear in your mind that you're not following any kind of sexual or sensual desire. So we'll leave it there tonight because there's a lot of questions, but we'll never finish them all anyway.